Alright, so today I got a pretty interesting one for you all, and I'm going to try and keep this video nice, short, and sweet. Well, I guess don't count on it, you know how I get pretty rambly. But anyway, today I have in front of me an engine block that has some interesting engine damage. Now, it's not the typical engine damage that you're familiar with, like throwing a rod or anything like that. And it's pretty much a result of sitting stuff around too long and not getting to it. And it kind of hits home because I used to kind of have a hoarding issue with my automotive parts, and I still have about one too many engine blocks sitting around here, but at least I keep them off the ground and we're not on a dirt floor scenario. And today we're gonna see just why that's so bad and kind of some of the backstory on this block and you know, how this engine was destroyed. But anyway, it's back to engine building season, winter. It's about 10 degrees out here and whatever. Got a little 351 Windsor block on the ground here that once this engine's done, it's going to go up there, and we got a 393 stroker crank hanging out. So hopefully get that done. Maybe that'll end up in the F100, I'm not sure. We got a little roller 302 engine over there that's destined for the Galaxy this winter. It's in the long block stage right now, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. So we'll get the pan up there all prepped. It's a 7-quart custom pan for the old 65 Galaxy, and get that on it. It's a pretty fun little car. Hasn't seen the road since 2015. It's a 5-speed car with a 411 9-inch in the rear, and it gets out of its own way pretty good. But anyway, the point of this video today is to take a look at this engine block, and I got it from a buddy of mine. He actually gave it to me for free. Pretty nice fella, but anyway, what had happened to it is it was in a truck that was wrecked, and it was a very low mile engine, and it has absolutely no ring ridge to it. It looks like it might have been rebuilt at some point. It might have been burning a little bit of oil, but you know, it probably would have been a healthy running engine, and it was pulled out and saved. Now this was you know, somewhere in Iowa here, a lot of farm fields and what have you, and I'm sure it was stored in some sort of an agricultural shed or something to that effect. And anyway, what had happened is moisture found a way to creep its way into this engine and really mess it up. And when we flip it over, we'll really get a look at that. But just even looking at a lifter here, you can just see the damage. Now, this was cleaned up with a wire wheel, but you can just see all the pitting and just how damaging that is. And when that's in the cylinder wall, basically the amount of material you have to take out to clean that up pretty much just makes the block trash. You know, it just won't clean up, and you'd have to sleeve, and at that point you might as well get a new block. But anyway, you know, when it sits down on a dirt floor, especially in humid conditions, here in Iowa it gets, you know, 90 degrees, 100% humidity. It gets pretty intense. So you get that condensation effect where moisture finds its way into the engine, and for whatever reason, you know, if you have it sitting on the ground, it's much worse than if you have them elevated. And that's why I highly recommend these engine stands. And they're not the greatest thing ever, but they're pretty cheap, about $30, and definitely worth the investment. And I'm trying to get better about leaving links, so I'll leave a link to these as well. Really cheap on Amazon. Again, they're a great investment just for this reason. But anyway, let's flip this engine over here and we'll just see what that moisture did. And then this was a completely sealed engine, you know. Now it's down to the short block phase. That's how I got it. But originally it was all assembled and sealed, and we still had this happen to it. So let's flip it over and take a look at the underside and you know, just see what we're dealing with. Alright, we got the engine all flipped over here. We can get a look at the crank connecting rods, the pistons and piston skirts, and the lower part of the cylinder walls. And it looks like it's a one-piece rear main seal block, so probably 78 until they went to the roller engines, since this is a flat tappet unit. It looks like it might have a high volume oil pump on it. Looks to be a Melling potentially. And another item that I'm going to try not to preach on too much, but I see so many people slather so much gasket sealer on their engines when they assemble them, and a lot of times that stuff that you know, when it goops over into the crankcase and breaks away, it'll eventually find its way up to the oil pump pickup tube and get lodged in the pickup screen here. As you can see, there's a little bit of gasket sealer, and if you get too much of that, of course, you're going to cavitate your pump, destroy your pump, your bearings are going to be junk, and you just completely wasted your time. So that's something always be mindful of. But back to the point of our video here, looking inside this, you can see that there's a fair amount of surface rust on the crank itself and some of the connecting rods, which all in all isn't terrible. You know, you could live with it, and if it was in a vehicle that sat, you know, it would probably start up and run fine. But what ultimately ruined this engine, potentially, we're going to find out when we get it all apart though, is the moisture that got into it here really attacked these front two cylinders, especially cylinder number 1. It looks pretty bad. Now it looks like the top of the cylinder, either it burned oil, or someone put some oil in it to fog the engine, which is always a good idea if you're going to let stuff sit for a long time. But and that's why the top of our cylinders look good and everything looks pretty good. Normally when something sits for a long period of time, the cylinder that has the open intake valve and the open exhaust valve, those cylinders will rust up pretty bad, but it'll mostly be on the top side. But as you can see here, we have some rust that's formed on the bottom side, or rather quite a bit of rust that we're going to have to disassemble our engine to really try and clean that out. Obviously it's pretty bad, and our engine won't even make a full rotation. It goes and then it just stops, and right now it's actually stuck. I got it kind of wedged just trying to turn it over before I pop the pan off. But you know, we're going to try and get this all ripped apart and see if it's salvageable, but probably the pitting, especially on our cylinder right here, is so bad that it won't be usable. So I guess the reason for the videos is I just want everyone to be mindful of where they leave their engines, how much they've collected over time. I know a lot of us live in an agricultural setting potentially, and we have stuff sitting on the ground in dirt, and this is kind of stuff that happens when you have that humid environment. The moisture just likes to find its way in and cause damage like this. And even with this engine here that's been ran, as you can see, it had a nice coating of oil on everything. It's still, the rust found its way in and managed to wreak havoc on the internals of this engine here. So it kind of made me rethink all this stuff I have sitting around. And I used to have a pretty big hoarding problem. I've cut back quite a bit, but you know, you can lose engines very easily. And again, as I mentioned in other videos, these stands are a huge help just to keep things a little bit off the ground, and it just fights that moisture issue in the humid environment just that much more. Basically, we're just going to take a look at installing a wideband O2 gauge into just any old carbureted vehicle that I guess that you would want to do. Now, the O2 gauge is bar none the best addition you can make as far as a tuning tool to your carbureted car. Now, a lot of these sensors is you want to come in at a 45-degree angle, and there is some reasoning behind that, moisture building up on it and whatever. They just want to be able to drain out, so you want to avoid drilling it in horizontal, and definitely you don't want to be coming from below, because then you have a nice ground clearance issue potentially. But anyway, I opted to go ahead and use the original bell housing, and reason being is because the way the clutch works on this old school guy with the mechanical clutch linkage is it's designed to push on this clutch fork. Now the later models used a cable clutch where they pull on the clutch fork, so the pivot is on the opposite side. So far, if you maintained your old engine, this is the only change that you're going to have so far. So now coming in here further, on the old T5 swap, I actually used my original cross member.